So what are the lasso tools? Lasso tools, we have 3 of them. They're right here. If you click and hold down, you'll see we can shortcut to them by hitting the letter L. And there's 3 variations of essentially free-formed selection tools. So we'll start with the first one, the original lasso tool. And what you'll see is as you click around and click and hold down, you can just kind of draw whatever you want. And when you let go, it's automatically going to go right back to where you started. And now I have that as a selection. I could hit the letter V and move that object around now. Command Z, Command D. All right. Now, it always has to be closed. So that means if I do a half of an arc here and I let go, what's the shortest distance between 2 points? It is a straight line. It goes right back to where it started. Okay? Command D. So try to remember where you start this tool and try to end nearby. Now, how can we use this to put a selection around our fire alarm? Well, here's what I'm going to do. Come in here, and I'm going to do a pretty terrible job. I'm going to tell you it's on purpose at least. Right? So, oops, I missed. All right, I'm going to try. And if you see that red dot, that's just what I'm using to record the screen. So you're not going to have that red dot. I just wanted you guys to be able to see my cursor a little better. Whoops. And again, yes, that's on purpose. Oops. Okay. All right. So I ended where I started and I have this selection. I hit the letter V. It's okay. It's not great. So undo that. What could I do to make this a little better? Well, this is one of the most important concepts in this program. And that is that we can add and take away from selections, just like I told you a few minutes ago, with the plus and the minus effect, essentially using Shift and Option. So grab my lasso tool. First problem is this guy right here. So I have to ask myself, what is the problem with this? So if I think about this in the simplest terms, I selected too much, right? So I want just the fire alarm selected, but I have something else selected in addition. I've selected too much. So I need to take away from that. I know I have 2 keys that add or take away. Shift adds, and if I hold Shift, I can see a little plus sign there. And if I hold Option, I see a minus sign. Right? So on my cursor, I see that little minus sign pop up when I hit Option. I want to select the part that I don't want anymore. So I'm just going to come in here, select, and I'm just looping around it. I make this big kind of sloppy loop around it and let go, and it gets rid of that part of the selection. So I could add to my selection. I could take away from my selection. Okay, I'm going to undo those real quick. So what do I have up here? Well, I have a bit of fire alarm that's not selected, and I want to add that to my selection. I need that selected. So I want to always just take a second to think about it. Don't rush. So I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to add to that selection. And you don't have to do it all in one swoop either. So I can come in here, and I can just say, okay, that's enough for right now. And obviously, this will be a lot easier with a mouse and some good arm space, not necessarily a trackpad, although some people are very, very good on a trackpad. Or you may have a stylus or a tablet. That's fine too. All right. So now, depending on how detailed I want to get, and like I said, a lot of what you do in Photoshop will be determined by how good you can get with this. And take that away. All right. Ran out of space on my mouse pad for a minute there. All right. So all I'm doing is cleaning up those little bits. Just adding a little bit to that. Adding to that. Adding to that. And you see, I didn't have to be careful about that. And now I have an okay selection. Maybe not great. I could always shave this down just a little bit. And now V, selection tool. There you go. That moves it around. Okay. Command D, deselect that. So that's a nice way that we can modify a selection. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. And that's something a lot of people have a hard time with Photoshop. And digital artwork, I'd say in general, is that they don't realize at first it feels unnatural to know that we could always go back and change things. Okay. But that's our first lasso tool. Let's move to our second one. Second one is our polygonal lasso. Now, a polygon is any shape made of multiple sides and angles. Curves are not polygons, but straight lines. So if I click, and then I click again, and then I click again, and then I click again, I can make a many-sided shape, polygon. And all I have to remember is where I started. And if I put my cursor near where it's gonna where I started, it'll end it. And you can see that little close icon appears, that little loop next to my cursor appears. See? There it is. Click, and that ends it. If I lost that, or I want it to be a little lazier, say I made this triangle, and now I go, I just want to go right back to the beginning, I could also double click. And that brings me right back. Something a lot of people seem to not know is I'm doing a selection and I realize, oh, I clicked in the wrong space. On my keyboard, I could hit the backspace of the delete key, and it'll pull up those last points that it drew. So I can keep hitting backspace until I get to where I want to be. All right. And if you hit escape, it erases the entire line. Okay. So how do I do this one? Well, this is a pretty straightforward one. Click once at each corner. So I can start at the bottom, click here, click, click, click. And yes, I'm on the outside. It doesn't really matter because once I finish it, it's going to trim it right to kind of what does count. If I grab V, my selection tool, I'm sorry, my move tool, you can see it's just the parts that I selected, right? Command Z, undo, or again, file, revert, bring it back to what it was. Now, if I had a lasso selection, same idea as before, I wanted to add a little to it, hold Shift, or hold Option, add and take away. I could also mix and match the lasso tools. So I can go to my regular lasso, hold Shift, hold Option, right? So if you have one that doesn't work for the entire job, you can always mix and match. Okay. Third tool is the magnetic lasso. Click on the magnetic lasso. Very important on this one. Do not click and drag while holding down. You're just going to click and let go of the mouse. So I'm going to click once, let go. Now I can move my mouse without clicking, and I try to stay near the edge of the color boundary. And that's important. Hit click again. Oops, that's not what I wanted. So now what this is doing is it's looking for a difference in color to drop an anchor point into. Now I have one that I did not want here. Just like the last tool, I can hit delete on my keyboard until that's gone. And now if I click, it forces an anchor down. And if delete, it'll pick one back up. All right. Now, if you look in your options bar, it's going to end that tool for a minute. We have a couple of things. Most important right now is the area width that it's looking at and the contrast it's looking for. Now, I'm going to repeat this a few times, but all digital color has a number value in between the numbers of 0 and 255. This is looking for a 10% or more difference in that number between 2 pixels. So if it sees 2 pixels right up against each other that have that difference, it's going to drop an anchor. Okay, so you can see all these little tiny dots in here. And when it sees a difference of 10% or more, it drops an anchor point. So if I go up here, it's trying to figure out where I want that line. So it's kind of magnetized to the edge. All right. So if you zoom out, and this will work great in areas, whoops, don't want that, This will work great in areas that have high color contrast, but not in areas that are very, very similar colored. All right. So something like that can work very well. Once again, just like the others, you can mix and match it with the other lassos, and you can hold Shift to add to it. You can hold Option to take away. This is really good, again, for high color contrast areas. Okay.